Okay, this is going to be the review for before the retest for Unit 4. And we're going to start with just going over some basics here. There we go. Supplementary angles. They add up to 180. You should copy all these notes down. Make sure you study them before you take the retest. And the angles are either something that forms a straight line like this, because that's 180, or it could be just two angles where their sum is 180. So these two are supplementary. The other next possibility that we might have are complementary angles. Those add up to 90 degrees. So it could be something that forms a right angle here that we might have indicated this way, or it might again just be two angles, 30 and 60 over here, that we know add up to 90. Both are complementary. Adjacent angles we've talked about several times. It means that they're next to each other. It doesn't tell us anything about the size. It doesn't tell us anything about one size versus the other size. They don't add up to anything. They just happen to be any angles that are right next to each other. So for instance, these two angles are next to each other and they're adjacent. Similarly, these two are adjacent. It doesn't tell us anything about the size, just the placement of them. Vertical angles. Vertical angles only happen when I have two straight lines crossing, and they're these angles on this side. They're equal to each other. This one, if I tell you this one is 30, this one over here has to be 30 as well. Whatever one is, the other one has to be. The other ones are also vertical angles. This one here, I'll do it in a different color, and this one here. So I also know that these two would be supplementary. So if this is 130, this would be 150. 180 minus 30 is 150. And then if this one is 150, this one would also be 150. And finally, angle bisectors. A bisector cuts into two equal parts. And this is where I have a picture, and they've told me either that it's a bisector, or they've shown me with pictures that these two parts are equal. And really we have two kind of problems like this. The first kind of problem is where they say, this side is 30, and this is an angle bisector, so what's this other side? Well, in that case, this other side has to be the same thing, so it has to be 30 degrees. The other thing they might tell me is, well, these are both equal, and this one up here happens to be 80 degrees. In that case, I know that I take the 80 and divide the 80 by 2 to find that each one of those has to be 40 degrees. Then we also did, when I have two lines that are parallel, and I put the little arrows on there showing those are parallel, cut by a transversal. And I have basically three kind of angles here. I have corresponding angles. Those are the ones that match up. So 1 goes with 3. And corresponding angles are congruent. So angle 1 goes with angle 3. And let's say that this angle is 100 degrees. So this angle here would also be 100 degrees because those are corresponding. Angle 5, let's do angle 6. Angle 1 is 100, so we know by vertical angles, this one's a vertical angle, so this one would also be 100. And angle 6 is a corresponding angle with angle 8. This one is out of this little set of 4, it's in the bottom left, bottom right, and this one's in the bottom right, so those are corresponding. So angle 6 is congruent to angle 8. Now I know going back, these two are supplementary, so this one would have to be 80, because those add up to 180, and then angle 5 is corresponding with angle 7. So angle 5 is congruent to angle 7, so if this one's 80, this one also has to be 80. And finally, if this is 80, by vertical angles, I know if this one's 80, this one's 80. And then corresponding, if 2, which is the bottom left, would be corresponding to 4, which is the bottom left. So 2 and 4 are corresponding. Then I talk about alternate. And alternate is really important when we look at the transversal. This is my transversal, and I talk about whether it's alternate or same side. I'm saying alternate are on opposite sides, while same side is literally on the same side of the transversal. They're both on the left, or they're both on the right. Then interior and exterior has to do with whether it's on the inside of the parallel lines or on the outside. So this here is the interior. And then out here, this is the exterior. Here and here. So alternate interior would be like 2, and I have to stay on the interior, and alternate means the other side. So I wouldn't be this one because that would be on the same side. So this one and this one, they're both interior and they're on alternate sides. So 80 and 80. So that's angle 2 is congruent to angle 7. And if we look here, those are the same. So we know alternate interior angles are congruent. What's the other one? Well, the only other one that's inside is this one, 3 and 6. Those are on the interior, and they're on opposite sides of the line, of the transversal, so those are alternate interior, so 3 and 6. Now let's do alternate with the exterior. So we're talking about on the outside. 1 would go with 8. They are both on the exterior. One's on the left side, one's on the right side. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 8. And the other ones would be 5 and 4. Now same side is just like this, except we're literally talking about the same side here. So on the interior, the two that are on the same side happen to be 2 and 3. Angle 2 and angle 3. And on the exterior, it would be 1 and 4. But do 2 and 3, are those the same? No, one's 80 and one's 100. So these actually are supplementary. So angle 2 plus angle 3 equals 180, and angle 1 plus angle 4 equals 180. And now we can do the other side of the line. The interiors are 6 and 7, and they're supplementary. And the exteriors are 5 and 8, and those are supplementary. Okay, now we're going to talk about equations of line. The point slope form is y equals mx plus b. This is the slope, and this is the y-intercept. The y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. Point slope form is y minus y1 equals mx minus x1, where m is still the slope, and x1, y1 is a point on the line. And finally we have standard form, which is this form here. And unfortunately, A, B, and C, they don't tell us anything about slope. So just make a little note here. Nothing about slope. On this one, you must change it probably to this form here in order to find out what the slope is. If lines are perpendicular, let's actually start with if they're parallel, they have the same slope. So if one line has a slope of 3, the other line has a slope of 3. If they're perpendicular, they're negative reciprocals, which is a fancy way of saying change the sign and flip. So if one is 2/3, the other is negative 3/2. And if one is 1/2, the other one is going to be, flip it over, is 2 over 1, which is just 2, but I also have to make it negative, so this one would have to be negative 2. So that's the basics of what we did in this unit. All the notes kind of in one spot. The other video will go over the practice problems.